January 19th, 2009, thousands lined the National Mall to witness the inauguration of Barack Obama as the 44th President of the United States. For the first time since 1993, Democrats controlled the presidency. The newly elected president promised bipartisanship and to change Washington, D.C. But it was apparent his White House played a different style of politics. The arrival of no-holds-barred political operatives was a signal to Washington, D.C. that the new administration was ready to throw its weight around. It was a team clearly reflective of Barack Obama's own supreme self-confidence.
Income tax cuts over payroll tax refunds. Mr. Obama said, according to participants, that debate is over because, quote, I won. That triumphalism came one day after Speaker Nancy Pelosi offered no apologies for Democrats driving the stimulus debate.
Yes, we wrote the bill. Yes, we won the election.
But it was apparent his White House played a different style of politics.
We're not campaigning anymore. The election's over.
I served in the Illinois Senate with President Obama, and when I was with him in the General Assembly, it was a very different dynamic. In Washington today, we have one party that has basically said, we have all the answers, and we're willing to sit down and humor you in conversations, but the premise of this is, what's it going to take for you to vote for our bill? And as a result, you come up with a very different endgame.
For Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi, that endgame was big government for America.
Here in Washington, we're creating a $1 trillion health care bill, contemplating $1 trillion of an energy tax in cap and trade, and other spending, just regular budgetary spending that is breaking our backs.
Last year we had record deficits, $1.1 trillion. This year we're on course to have a $1.6 trillion deficit. You cannot continue to operate the federal government this way.
With unemployment skyrocketing upwards and job losses mounting in winter and spring of 2009, Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi took swift action, but not to reduce deficits or lower taxes to create jobs. Instead, they went on an unprecedented spending spree.
Let me put it into a historic context. It took 43 American presidents, from George Washington to George W. Bush, for us to accumulate $5 trillion in debt. That's really a staggering amount of money, but it took place over 2 centuries to get that done. This Congress and this administration will double that amount in 5 years and will triple that amount in 10 years. And they're doing it all with a straight face.
Already, this Congress has put us on a path to double the size of government, at least in the lifetime of my 8-year-old daughter and my 6-year-old son. I mean, that means our children are going to have smaller homes, they're going to drive older cars, they'll compete for fewer jobs with smaller paychecks, and ultimately, they're going to be confined to small dreams. That's not the America we believe in.
The results of Obama and Pelosi's bloated federal budget, auto bailouts, and the Democrat stimulus bill have been toxic. Over 3 million jobs lost, unemployment as high as 10%, and now the credit of the U.S. government is threatened.
You get a better return on Warren Buffett's bonds than you do on federal treasury bonds. I mean, that's how bad it's gotten in this country, and it needs to change. We need to get to a balanced budget. We need to get a handle on this spending.
Right now, we're borrowing 42 cents on the dollar. We're mainly borrowing it from the Chinese, and we're sending the bill to our children and our grandchildren.
Foreign debt is imperiling the U.S. financial system.
About half of our money that we're borrowing right now comes from foreigners. China's #1, Japan's #2. Problem we have is we're not going to be able to keep doing it this way. We're going to eventually have to pay people a lot more to lend us their money. That means interest rates go up quite a bit, because the credit markets, the bond markets, foreigners who lend us money like the Chinese, they don't trust that we're getting our fiscal house in order. They are not sure or confident that we're going to be able to repay all of these bonds. So therefore, they will ask for a much higher interest rate in order to continue lending us their money.
It's more and more spending, and we're not seeing the resulting jobs. And if we ran our own home budgets like this, they'd been busted a long time ago.
Seniors who live on annuities, Social Security, or pensions will have their savings wiped away. And if we resort to inflation as the means to settling the debts we have in this country, that will wipe out the middle class in America. And unfortunately, we are on a path and a trajectory to do just that.
As the economic situation continued to worsen, the administration became even more determined to continue their economic policies and big government agenda. But what was most shocking was the administration officials knew that their budgets were putting the nation at risk.
The president's own budget director, Peter Orszag, came in front of the Budget Committee when he was unveiling the president's budget, and under oath testified and indicated that the president's budget is unsustainable. So here you have the president's budget experts saying their budget that they submit to Congress is unsustainable because it runs deficits in the area of 8, 9, 10% of GDP. Any economist will tell you you have to at least be at 3% of GDP, preferably lower, to have any type of sustainability.
Peter Orszag in the White House Budget Office let the ideological agenda of Barack Obama and the Democratic majority in Congress drive the decision-making process on the budget, ignoring simple economic realities.
So when their own budget director admits that what they're submitting to Congress and their level of spending you can't sustain, that indicates how tough, how difficult this situation is, and just highlights that we have to begin to focus on reducing spending, setting a framework where economic growth and activity can foster and flourish, and not doing the same kind of policies that we've seen from this administration.
According to the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, President Obama's budget at the end of 10 years, it's so staggering I had to write it down. Our debt will equal 90% of our economy. Now think about that. They extrapolate that means we're going to be spending $2.5 billion a day just in interest alone.
Even after giant budgets, bailouts, and the stimulus, the administration had their sights set on an even larger challenge: health care reform, something that had eluded presidents for decades, even costing Bill Clinton his Democratic majorities in the House and in the Senate in 1994. Under the guise of reform, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid were prepared to completely reinvent the American economy. Healthcare reform finally provided progressives a way to fundamentally reshape government.
You know, looking back over the last year, I would say that this whole healthcare debate was not about healthcare policy. It wasn't about prices and choosing doctors and healthcare premiums and affordability and accessibility. It was about ideology. Because if you look at what was underneath this really was about having the government take over 16% of our economy, putting the government in control of one of the most personal aspects of our lives, how and where and when we get our health care.
The easiest thing that Washington does under Democratic control is they say yes to everybody's program today, but by doing so, they're saying no to our children's future tomorrow. And that's not the greatness of America. That's not the America we grew up in. That's not the America we believe in.
And so when you take a look at where we're headed, this bill was, I would say, the largest ideological lurch to the left we've seen in a generation.
The administration knew that passing healthcare reform would be an arduous task, but it quickly became apparent that they were ill-equipped to deal with the reality of its rejection by the public.
And the American people told them, they told them in the New Jersey election, they told them in the Virginia election, they told them loudly and clearly when they elected Scott Brown to Ted Kennedy's seat in Massachusetts.
As opposition to healthcare reform grew thunderous, the pro-healthcare reform forces in Washington grew desperate. With the heightened public concern over growing deficits, it was important for congressional Democrats to write a bill that would look budget neutral. But there were some that could see through the Enron-esque accounting of Nancy Pelosi.
So the CBO is telling us that this is reducing the deficit, and that's what you heard the president and the Democratic leaders saying all along. The point about the CBO I'd like to make is this: they're very good people, they work very hard, they're professionals. I work with them on a daily basis. But the way their law works, that governs how the CBO works, is they have to score whatever you put right in front of them. So if you give them a piece of legislation, they have to score that legislation. That means Congress can manipulate legislation to get a predetermined outcome on the cost estimate. Let me just give you a chart and show you what I mean when I say this. What the Democrats are saying is their bill actually reduced the deficit by $138 billion. By the way, that's smaller than last month's deficit. But what the bill really does is it double counts a lot of money. It takes $70 billion of premiums out of this new long-term care insurance bill that they produced to spend on government-run health care. It takes $53 billion from the Social Security Trust Fund to spend on government-run health care. $71 billion will be needed to run government-run health care. They don't measure that. They're taking $398 billion out of the Medicare Trust Fund, not to shore up Medicare solvency, to spend on government-run health care. You add up all of this, take out the gimmicks, the smoke and the mirrors, stop counting a dollar twice, which is what that bill does. It's $662 billion over just the first 10 years of this bill. So when you actually use real math and reality, these numbers just don't add up.
The Health Care Reform Act was passed with only Democrats voting for the measure. Then the president signed the bill into law. It took a year of PR stunts, strong arming, and backroom deals to pass it. But it was finally the law of the land.
I think over the last year and a half, we have seen just unprecedented spending here. We are passing generational debt onto our children and grandchildren.
We've got to get America working again. And when you have the debt that you have today, you can't make the investment for the future.
Now America is at a crossroads.
I don't know how any of us can look our kids and grandkids in the eyes and explain to them that we're not responsible enough to pay for the things we're enjoying today. We're just going to send them the bill, let them figure it out.
It's been a year and a half since his inauguration, and Barack Obama has seen unemployment soar, millions of jobs lost. His bloated budgets are setting the foundation for deep, long-term instability in our economy. The only economic certainty is that he, along with Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, have set America on a course of redistributive change, where government controls over half of the economy. But there are alternatives, real solutions to the fiscal crises of Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi.
The difference between the majority party and the House Republicans, we believe in accountability. We believe in going line by line throughout the budget.
America is at a critical crossroads. There's no question that we are in unprecedented times where we've seen Washington continue on a spending binge that rivals any that our country has seen in the past 200-some years. We've got some tough decisions to make, there's no doubt about it, and they start with making sure that we rein in the debt and get our fiscal house in order.